Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our Nebraska Visitors edition of the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Our guest today will be the radio play-by-play voice of the Huskers, Greg Sharpe. Before he jumps on, my view from Section 17 to get us started. It's a great feeling to be 5-0 and to have won a big game on the road, especially in Madison. We can't celebrate that feat too very long. This Saturday night, we run through the tunnel at Memorial Stadium to do battle with an improved Nebraska squad. That stadium is a crazy place anytime, but when it's a Saturday night game, it's a nut house. Couple that with the fact the Huskers are coming off their best performance of the year against Northwestern. This is not a team to be taken lightly. They have an explosive offense, if they avoid turnovers, and a physical, fast defense. They are rated top 10 in just about every statistical category nationally. It's going to be a game. And as happy as I was last Saturday, it didn't take me long to come back down to earth. 5-0 is great. We want more. It's one game at a time, and as the late great Bob Ufer used to say, what you did last Saturday means nothing. They wrapped fish in yesterday's newspaper. Winning two big games back-to-back would tell us maybe this team is different, and maybe a new day is dawning in Michigan football. I can't wait. It's going to be a blast. It's been a rough go for Nebraska since joining the Big Ten. Fans thought bringing back Scott Frost would change things swiftly. It hasn't happened that way, and it wasn't realistic to think that it would. He had a big rebuilding job on his hands. It takes time, and Scott is now only in his fourth season. Yes, he's on the hot seat, but it looks more and more each week like this Nebraska team is closer to being what Huskers fans envisioned when Frost took over. With us next is the radio play-by-play voice of the Huskers, Greg Sharpe, so stay with us. Here with us on our visitors edition of the show is Nebraska radio play-by-play voice Greg Sharpe. Greg, a pleasure to have you on the show.
Great to be with you and great to to talk Nebraska-Michigan football. I don't think we've done nearly enough of that since the Huskers joined the league 11 years ago.
No, it seems like it's every now and again we play each other, and rarely, I don't know that we've ever played a Saturday night game there, but that's going to be fascinating to see. Huskers are 3-3 heading into that big primetime game on ABC, and they sure looked good in dismantling Northwestern on Saturday night, didn't they?
They did. It's been building to that. This is a team that's gotten considerably better as the season has worn on after just a really poor performance out of the gate in week 0 against Illinois. I think this team has made steady progress over the last 5 weeks. And that includes going to Oklahoma and playing the Sooners tight, lost by a touchdown there, followed that up with a trip to East Lansing. And we're a little jaded here, but we felt like that Nebraska was the better football team, but gave up a late punt return to tie the game and lost in overtime to the Spartans, and then kind of put it all together against the Cats on Saturday to thump them. And so there's some real optimism around the program now in year 4 under Coach Frost.
Watching that game Saturday night, it seemed like the Huskers' home crowd was just waiting for an explosion like that from the offense. I mean, the place was rocking, and as we all know, when the crowd is amped up there in Lincoln, it is an incredible atmosphere, isn't it?
It's one of the best ones, I think, in the country, and it's just the way the stadium's designed. It just kind of suits itself to a great atmosphere, and obviously great tradition of football here. Nebraska has sold out every game since 1962, and interesting, in 1962, it ties it back to Michigan. Bob Devaney was in the infancy of his program in Nebraska and kind of launched things by beating Michigan in Ann Arbor. They came back the next week to the Huskers to host the Missouri Tigers, sold out the stadium. And since that time, every game has been sold out and will be again this Saturday when Michigan comes to town.
Well, many of the preseason magazines, Greg, were saying this was a hot seat season for Scott Frost. It's never easy, we know, coming back to your alma mater to coach, as Jim Harbaugh knows well. At the minimum, what does Coach Frost need to do this year to get more time for his program?
Well, I think he needs to do what he has done to this point in the season, and that is show improvement. I think people knew that this was a big turnaround job. Then you throw in the pandemic year last year, which I think was kind of a lost year for college football, particularly in the Big Ten, with as late as we started the season. So I think a lot of people felt like this actually was kind of year 3 for Scott. Show us improvement. Show us that we can physically stand up and play against everybody on your schedule. And I think to this point, halfway through the year now, they've done that. So I think there's really not much hot seat talk in this area, because I think people are seeing what they hope to see out of this year's team. And obviously you still have 6 weeks to go and some really difficult teams to play, including Michigan this week. But I really feel like people are happy with what they have seen here in 2021 from Scott Frost and this entire staff.
Well, I noticed on Saturday night, Coach Frost did a little shaking up with his offensive line, and the results were very impressive, especially with that running attack that netted over 400 yards. Is it too early to say the offensive line has turned a corner now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and he was quick to say that after the game. He said, hey, it's one game. I need to see it week after week before we declare that we've settled into this thing. Probably the youngest group on this team is that offensive line. It's a very inexperienced group. We knew that coming into the season. And they've had some rocky outings. They gave up 7 sacks to the Spartans 2 weeks ago, and I think that's what precipitated the change and the shakeup. And Nebraska went with a true freshman left tackle. That is scary. Any college football coach would go, oh my goodness, you're going to put a true freshman in left tackle. That's maybe the one spot you don't try to do that. But he held up really well. Young man by the name of Teddy Prohaska did a really nice job against Northwestern, but it's going to be a whole different challenge for him this week with an outstanding defensive front of Michigan. So this will be a much better test of where he is in his development, and obviously it's very, very young in his college career.
Well, they sure looked good on Saturday night, opening truck holes against Northwestern, and young Mr. Yant sure made the most of his carries. So along with Ramir Johnson, the Huskers have a nice 1-2 punch going.
Yeah, Jaquez Yant is a big fella. He's 230 pounds, 6'2", and he's got really good feet. We had not seen much of him. He had an impressive spring, including a big spring game, but then kind of let his weight get away from him in the summertime. And so he has not played much until Saturday, and he broke off a couple of big runs, got over 100 yards rushing in the game. But he's a problem for people if he's right, because of his size. Defensive backs aren't real anxious to come up and hit a guy that size, and he's got some pretty good quickness and speed. So if he can take care of himself off the field and, eat right, do all those things that you have to do, I think he could become a nice part for this offense. Really, Nebraska was probably as healthy as they've been all season long last Saturday against Northwestern. They welcome back the guy that Michigan fans will remember, Oliver Martin, who started his career at Michigan, transferred to Iowa, and then ended up in Lincoln. He played the opener against Illinois and then got hurt with a leg injury, and he has not played until the Northwestern game, so he was back. So some of the parts are kind of falling into place for this offense, and I think that's what's given some folks some confidence that the back half of this year could be a lot of fun in Lincoln.
Well, watching Nebraska for years now, the guy that has always scared me, if you're looking at having to defend him, is Adrian Martinez. And it seems like he's been there forever, but he is the straw that stirs the drink. He is so dangerous, isn't he?
No doubt. I think any coaching staff that gets prepared to play Nebraska, they go, okay, it starts with him. Everything runs through, and that's true of any offense. Everything runs through the quarterback. But with Nebraska, it definitely runs through Adrian. He's a dual-threat quarterback. He leads this team in rushing. His passing accuracy has been very good. He is completing 67% of his passes on the year. He's only thrown 2 interceptions, and one of them was kind of a throwaway at the end of a possession where it was 4th down. They went for it, and he just had to kind of toss it into the end zone and hope something good happened. So he's really only thrown 1 interception all season, playing very, very well. You're right, he's a 4-year starter. He started the last time these two teams played, he was the starting quarterback, but had gotten hurt the week before and did not play in that game in Ann Arbor. So this will be his first chance to play Michigan. But playing at a very, very high level. Right now, I think he would be one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten Conference.
One of the big questions this week will be whether the Blackshirts can answer the call against what looks like a good Michigan offense. That defense looks much improved this season, Greg, and statistically, nationally, they're in the top 10 in a lot of categories, aren't they?
They've been fantastic. It's, Nebraska welcomed back 6 of those super seniors from last year with the NCAA, rightfully so, allowing kids to come back because of the COVID year, and all 6 of Nebraska's were on that side of the ball. And they're all really helping the team out. The 2 safeties, JoJo Dolman, Ben Stilley, those are guys that opted to come back and play a 6th season. And they're really leading that group a little bit. Mike, it was amazing 2 weeks ago up in East Lansing. In the second half, the Spartans did not have a first down in the entire half of football. I don't know that I've seen that at this level of play. And that's what made that loss so disappointing. You're like, how much better can you put your defense play, and yet you couldn't come out of there with a win because you gave up a long punt return for a touchdown to force overtime. So they've been playing very, very well. Followed up that performance in East Lansing by only allowing 7 points to the Wildcats. So, they're playing at a very, very high level. I know Michigan just saw an outstanding defense last week with Wisconsin. The Huskers like what they're doing on that side of the ball. They have elevated their play to a level that certainly can compete week in and week out in the conference.
Well, I got to see bits and pieces of the Nebraska-Oklahoma game, then all of the Michigan State and Northwestern games. The biggest difference, it seemed to me, against the Wildcats was how clean they played with the lack of turnovers, penalties. If the Huskers can keep doing that, replicate what they did last Saturday night, they become a even more dangerous team, don't they?
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that also was part of the reason for the changes along the offensive line. A lot of those penalties were along the offensive line, false starts, that type of thing. It happened in both Oklahoma and Michigan State, and granted, both those games were on the road, and so this new group got a chance to do that last week at home, but this week's game's at home as well. So you're not going to have the deal with the noise problems when you're on offense. That's when the crowd quiets down quite a bit. But that's been the goal, is to try to play clean. I think Scott Frost, and he said it quite a bit in the last several months, this team is capable of playing with anybody on their schedule, and I think what they did with those 2 trips to Norman and East Lansing is I think they kind of validated that a little bit. Now, I think Michigan's playing at such a high level. This will certainly be another huge challenge for this team on Saturday night, but I know they're really anxious for that. They're anxious to get another crack at pulling off a big win and to try to keep the momentum that they've built the last few weeks.
Well, as we talked about earlier, Greg, there's something special about Memorial Stadium on a Saturday night. In a tight game, the crowd there really can be an X factor, can't they?
Sure can. I think, it's one of the beautiful things about college football is that home crowds can swing a game, can swing momentum. You also, I think, early in games, in big games, the crowd can maybe overhype your team a little bit. You have to learn how to channel that and not let that force you into mistakes. But you're right, late in games, that's when it should really benefit the home team. And I think that will be different for Michigan coming into this game. I mean, they've just had the road game in Madison, but that was a noon kick, so there wasn't the lure of the night crowd that people are extra amped up. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be one of those things that we all love about the sport, is seeing the pomp and circumstances of night football games. And I I certainly enjoyed watching the Michigan-Washington game from earlier in the year when that was at night. I thought that was a special atmosphere. I thought what Penn State did when they had Auburn come to town a few weeks ago at night, that was really cool. So as a college football fan, I love seeing these type of things, and everybody's going to get to witness the same thing from Lincoln on Saturday. The weather's going to be spectacular. The high that day is supposed to be in the low 80s, so by kickoff, it'll probably be upper 70s. It ought to just be a spectacular night and the great pageantry of college football should come alive.
Well, Michigan comes in as a 3-point favorite. We know that means nothing. When Nebraska has the ball on offense, how do you think they match up against from what you've seen of this Michigan defense?
Well, I think it's going to be a tremendous challenge for this offensive line to try to move what I think is one of the best fronts in college football. I think its points are going to be hard to come by. And then you get down to the little things. And the little things have been troublesome for Nebraska the last few years. Do you turn the ball over? Do you make a critical mistake in the special teams play? Those are things that I think tilt to the advantage of the Wolverines. And I think that's what worries Nebraska's coaching staff is, man, if it comes down to this or that, those are the things we have not been very good at in the last couple of years. So we've got to try to be better at that if we want to knock off an outstanding team in the Wolverines on Saturday night. So those to me will be the things to kind of keep an eye on as you're scoring this one from home. Is one of those things shift that way? If I'm a Wolverine fan, I've got confidence in a lot of those things. So that'll be the challenge for the Big Red.
Well, we talked about how good the Nebraska defense has been so far this year, but what do you see as the biggest challenge for the Black Shirts when trying to slow down that Michigan offense?
Well, can they physically hold up with that gigantic, and I was working on my charts today, that gigantic offensive line that Michigan throws out there. And Nebraska's defensive front's been very good throughout the year. So I think that will be a fun battle to watch, that battle in the trenches. Here's the other thing, too, I think about this matchup. I don't believe Michigan has trailed yet this year.
No.
Well, how do they act if Nebraska were able to get out to a early lead in this game? How does that change some of the play calling for the Wolverines and that type of thing? So, it's obviously easier to play defense when you're in front. For Nebraska, I know that'll be a key. Can they get off to a fast start and put Michigan in an uncomfortable situation, which they haven't faced at all here in 2021?
No, and I'm sure as Wisconsin tried to do on Saturday, Nebraska has seen 5 games of Michigan. They've seen the tape, and really McNamara has not had to win a game or take over throwing. And I'm sure the game plan is to make him throw that football.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Michigan has just been so reliant on the run, and you can do that when you have the lead in games. As I watch this Michigan team, they're not real fancy. They just say, here's what we're going to do, see if you can stop us. And so far, nobody has. And so that's going to be a huge challenge. This is so fun. I can't wait for this thing to kick off and get going. I just think it's going to be a blast. And I think you can certainly draw up advantages for both sides in this game, and also kind of create paths to victory for both sides. And that makes it pretty intriguing.
Well, final question for you, Greg, before we let you get away. Beating Michigan on the national stage would do wonders, of course, for the program and for Coach Frost. For Michigan, just winning another big road game would be huge. That would make it 2 in a row. It's only mid-season, but this game has a lot riding on it for both teams, doesn't it?
It sure does. I think it would be validation for Nebraska fans that Scott Frost is moving this in the right direction. And for Michigan, it would ensure big-time matchups still to come against Sparty and against Penn State and against Ohio State, obviously, at the end of the year. A little bit of hope here in Lincoln is that Michigan's not really – this game hasn't really been on their radar much because – they knew they had a big matchup with Wisconsin, and then all those big battles in the East still to come. Nebraska's kind of hoping to lay in the weeds here a little bit and hope maybe they catch the Wolverines not quite ready to play. That would be an advantage for Nebraska as well. But there's a lot at stake. That's the beauty of this sport, right? You only get 12 chances to do this every fall, and every game there's so much weighted to it. And some games weigh maybe a little bit more than others, but yeah, this is a big one. Both teams would love to get this feather and put it in their cap.
Going to be a great atmosphere down there in Lincoln on Saturday night. I know Michigan fans looking forward to it also, so we shall see. Here with us on our visitors edition today has been Nebraska radio play-by-play voice Greg Sharpe. Greg, we've enjoyed the visit, and we look forward to having you back in the future when we play Nebraska again.
Mike, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
On Quick Hits today, no injury news to report or update once again. Here are a few game day notes of interest, though. Michigan leads this series with 5 wins against 4 losses, and there has been 1 tie. The first meeting between these two schools was in Ann Arbor on October 21st, 1905, a 31-0 shutout win for us. The last meeting was on September 22nd, 2018 in Ann Arbor, a 56-10 win for Michigan. Scott Frost is in his 4th season as head man at his alma mater. He has a record of 15 wins and 23 losses. In last year's COVID season, the Huskers were 3-5. They have 14 starters returning, 4 on offense, 9 on defense, and 1 specialist. Their last postseason appearance was in the 2016 Music City Bowl against Tennessee. They lost 38-24. The weatherman says it will be a beautiful night in Lincoln. Temps in the 70s to start the game, dropping into the mid to upper 50s late in the game, and there is a very slight chance of rain. Kickoff is just after 7:30 p.m. Eastern and can be seen on ABC. Here we go. If we can put together back-to-back wins on the road in 2 hostile environments, we will know something has changed with Michigan football. I would like to sit back and watch us cruise to victory, but something tells me it's going to be a dogfight. That's okay too. I think we're ready for that. We have a bye next week, so we'll only have 1 show. On Thursday, we'll do a mid-season report card. Joining us will be editor John Borton from the Wolverine magazine, so make sure you join us. That will take care of us for another week. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. Think victory, beat Nebraska. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!